Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. All about nutrition from your favorite dietitian. Everything you need to digest in your mind. Tips with Tony. Tips with Tony. Making you healthier one bite at a time. With Tony. Woo.
Hello, and welcome to the Tips with Tony podcast. I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time. In this episode, I'm going to teach you 5 ways you can increase your protein intake, and I'm going to give you specific examples of snacks and even meal ideas to do that. This is going to be a super informative episode, so get ready. The first thing that you need to know is that protein really is important. All macronutrients are important. So when I say macronutrients, I'm referring to carbohydrates, protein, and fat. Protein, they're all important, guys. Carbs are important, fat's important, protein is also important. So it's learning how to prioritize all of them in a balanced way. Now, protein, depending on who you follow, you might be trying to reach these astronomical protein goals, or you might be thinking that, maybe you get adequate amounts and you think that you do fine because you have like apple and peanut butter as a snack. Well, I'm sorry to burst your bubble, but I'm going to tell you that that peanut butter is actually not a good protein source. Although it carries protein in it, it carries more fat, and it's a healthy fat, so we count it more as a fat source. So if you think that you had a peanut butter and jelly sandwich and you had some protein, sorry to burst your bubble, but that's actually not the case. So in this episode, I'm going to teach you different high-quality sources of protein and ways that you can get it. But before we do that, I want to talk about why it's important. So consuming adequate amount of protein is going to help preserve your muscle mass. Preserving your muscle mass is important for 2 reasons. One, it prevents things like osteoporosis, which is basically brittle bones, and so that way when you get older, I know you might not care now, depending on how old you are listening to this, but as you get older, you've heard you might have a grandparent who fell and broke their hip, and they ended up getting an infection, and it was a really, really bad thing, and so all because that if you have strong bones, you can fall, break your hip, or you can fall and not break your hip, right? And so as you get older, we don't want to have our brittle bones and our weak bones because it can lead to other issues and complications, right? We want to stay out of the hospital if we can, especially now during COVID. All right. Now, so that's one part of it. But the other part, which is probably what you're listening to and why you're listening to this, is if you want a fast metabolism, if you are either trying to lose weight or maintain weight or achieve fat loss, you need your metabolism to function properly. And the more muscle you have on your body, the faster your metabolism is. That's why people who are super, you can see like they're ripped and they could eat almost anything and quote unquote never gain a pound. I'm sure they do. But all that to say that the more muscle you have on the body, the larger or the bigger your basal metabolic rate is, so the calories that you burn at rest. So all that to say, protein is really, really important, especially because if you are trying to lose weight or lose body fat, then we want to make sure that the weight that you're losing is coming from fat and water and not coming from the muscle. So in those cases, it's particularly important to make sure you're getting adequate protein. Also, if you are an athlete or you do a lot of strength training or just a lot of exercise in general, you're constantly breaking down muscle as you increase your reps and, work really, really hard. And it's really awesome. But unless you are prioritizing things like protein, carbohydrates, sleep, hydration, all of those things, then your muscle mass is not going to repair itself, right? So we break down the muscle, we need to repair the muscle, and that's why protein is important. Okay, protein is also important. See, there's so much more reasons than just 2 as I'm speaking about this. Protein is also important because when you consume it with carbs and fat, it can really help you to regulate blood sugars. And if you currently have diabetes or are at risk for diabetes, or you want to prevent getting diabetes, then it's important that you're consuming a healthy fat or a protein alongside with your carbohydrates. Now, that doesn't mean all the time, but just in general. That's why I hope that you understand by now that balance is so important. So all macronutrients matter, and we just need to learn how to incorporate all like higher quality sources of each, and allow a little room for those more fun flavors and fun options as well. All right, let's get into it. We're going to talk about 5 ways to increase your protein intake. The very first way, I think it's always best, is if you can kind of spread out your protein throughout the day. Studies support either or option. It used to be believed that you had to spread it out throughout the day to get your body to optimize it and utilize it the best. More and more studies are starting to show that's not actually the case. To me, I don't think it matters so much, but in general, I think that I do believe in eating at least 3 meals a day. So meaning I think it's easier if you kind of spread it out rather trying to get 100 grams of protein in your breakfast, probably really challenging, right? So to spread it out, I just always tell people to aim for around 25 grams of protein at each meal. And then the second way to increase your protein would be to include at least one protein-rich snack. So your protein needs vary, and I am going to refer you back to another podcast episode that I did. It was episode 116, and it talked about how to identify your protein needs. There's a lot of myths out there about how much protein you need, and I think that episode alone cleared things up. In general, it really depends on your height, your age, your gender, your activity level, your goals. There's many factors that come into play, but I don't think it would hurt anyone if you're listening to this and you're an adult to aim for at least 100 grams of protein a day. It's kind of hard to do, but if you follow these guidelines, it is a lot easier to do. If you are someone who is vegan, you might have a little bit harder of a time, but it is possible, and I'm going to include some vegan snack options later in this episode. If you're vegetarian, it might be a little hard, but as long as you consume dairy, you're probably okay. Same thing with pescatarian. If you consume eggs, dairy, and fish, probably fine. If you have a balanced diet and you don't restrict in any way, it's a lot easier to do. So all that to say, getting 100 grams of protein is possible, but your needs might be higher than that, or they might be a little bit shy of that. But I think in general, for when I'm giving advice to the general population, those who are listening, I'm going to go with around 100 grams as I give these examples. Now, if your needs are higher, then you just increase your portions of these items. And if your needs are a little bit lower, then you probably don't need to get to that about 25 grams at each meal. You could probably get closer to that 20 grams at each meal. Okay? So first way to increase protein intake, aim for about 25 grams of protein at each meal. Now, the way to do that is to kind of sneak it in. So at, lunch and dinner, you'll probably find it's easier to get some protein in if you have something like, chicken, or if you're a vegetarian or vegan, and tofu or some shrimp. But at breakfast, you might not be eating those things. So, eggs are a good source of protein. One way that I get people to sneak in more protein if they're eating eggs without adding too many calories is using 100% liquid egg whites. Now, that doesn't mean you can't have the whole egg. You 100% can. The yolk is a very good source of vitamin D and vitamin B12 and some omega-3s as well. So you can totally eat the egg yolk. But if you are also on a fat loss goal or your calories are limited, then there's only so many egg yolks that carry the fat. They carry more calories that you can have before you reach that. So to get to your protein goals without exceeding your fat and calorie goals, I recommend using about 1, maybe 2 full eggs, and then doing about a half a cup or even a whole cup of 100% liquid egg whites. It's a lot. It's really, really filling. So just to put things into perspective, 1 cup of 100% liquid egg whites is 25 grams of protein. So that's why you probably don't need that. But if you some people like egg whites, so if you want to just have that as an egg white omelet, totally fine. I like the combo. I usually do 1 egg and a half a cup of 100% liquid egg whites, and that's going to really help you get to around that 25 grams. I'm going to be talking about other kind of sources of protein throughout this. So just so you know, I don't really believe in breakfast foods and lunch foods and dinner foods. So if you wanted to wake up in the morning and have your leftovers from the night before, and your leftovers was a pork chop, potatoes, and green beans, that's totally fine, so whatever you got to do, that works. And then if some of the snack ideas I'm going to give you later, you wanted to have that with your breakfast, that's fine. So the only difference I would say if we're talking about breakfast for snacks is breakfasts tend to be a little bit larger. They include at least 3 food groups, so they'll have that good quality, 25 to 30 grams of protein. It'll have a healthy fat, a healthy starch. It's a lot more well balanced, where as a snack, we could have, a good decent amount of protein, but you might pair it with a piece of fruit or, some nut butter or something, right? So that's a healthy fat. So it's not as big as a whole meal would be. So that's the only really real difference. But once again, it all comes down to your individual needs. And some people prefer like 4 to 5 small meals a day, and other people prefer like 3 large meals and, 1 to 2 snacks and whatever it is. But this is just something to getting you to start thinking about things. All right, so the other way to increase your protein intake is to include at least one protein-rich snack. So I'm going to give you guys a list of different protein-rich snacks that I recommend to my clients. And I'm going to start with some that are dairy-based, because some of you might not eat dairy, some of you might be vegan, vegetarian, and then we're going to talk about like ones that are, for those who eat meat, and then some vegan options, okay? So the first 3 that are dairy-based is like a cheese stick and about a quarter or a half a cup of roasted chickpea, about a half a cup of roasted chickpeas. So a half a cup of roasted chickpeas plus a cheese stick, that's going to get you to your 20 grams of protein. Okay, a half a cup or 3/4 of a cup, of cottage cheese with some berries, and you can even throw some flaxseed in there. So seeds are a healthy fat, but they do carry a little bit of protein, so that helps. Maybe about 2 to 3 grams. Not much, but it'll bring it, that cottage cheese I think is around like 18 grams or so. Greek yogurt with some chia seeds. So Greek yogurt, especially if you do kind of a plain one, I know it's not as flavorful, but maybe throw some ground cinnamon in there, a piece of fruit, and you throw a little chia seeds in there. So the Greek yogurt will probably have around like 18 grams of protein, and you put 1 to 2 teaspoons of chia seeds, and that'll bring it up to that 20 grams. All right, so those are the dairy-based ones. Some animal-based ones, more like for if you're a meat eater, is, or if you eat fish, this is one of my favorite snacks. So I take smoked salmon and I put it either with hummus or some this is dairy. If you do dairy, you can put goat cheese. If you don't do dairy, you could do some hummus on a rice cake with the everything but the bagel seasoning from Trader Joe's. It is literally the best thing ever. It is so good. Another option is taking like some jerky and with like a hard-boiled egg. You could also do like turkey cold cuts with some like guacamole and a lettuce wrap. If you are, like I said, vegan, vegetarian, or if not, like there's protein bars and protein shakes and smoothies that are either those that have dairy or those that are dairy-free, depending on what your needs are. So just make sure that you're looking for protein bars or shakes or smoothies that have 20 grams of protein. Be mindful of the things like the added sugar in the smoothies and also in the bars and stuff. Most of them are totally okay. Recommendations I tend to make for my clients, the Quest bar, One Bar, Pure Protein Bar, and there's a ton of others. And obviously it's all dependent on your goals. If you have if you have extensive amount of like bloating and diarrhea and stomach issues, wouldn't recommend a Quest bar. It's very high in dietary fiber. So maybe like a Pure Protein Bar is better for you. But everything is going to come down to like your preferences and what you look for. And obviously the taste too. You want to like the taste as well. Shakes, pre-made shakes, the OWYN. That's a plant-based shake, protein shake that I recommend. I'll get like a protein powder from home and make my own smoothie. So I use Garden of Life. If I just switched over to an Optimal Nutrition brand. It's not plant-based, but there's chocolate bliss. The flavor is just incredible. Like, it is so delicious. So I just switched over to that just because I tasted it at my sister's apartment, and it was literally just so good. So I had to buy it for myself. But so experiment with those things, but those are great for, snacks in between or after a workout too as well. And so like I said, so that could be like plant-based. And then another option for, like plant-based is like edamame. So you could do like a cup of roasted edamame or, the edamame that's like you get in the freezer and then you just put it in the microwave, and you could just throw some like sea salt on it, like kind of like if you were gonna go to like a Japanese restaurant. So so good. Okay, like so good. All right, so those are some options for protein-rich snacks. Now, another way to increase your protein, and this is where people can get confused. So what I'm going to say is when you're choosing, another way to increase your protein is to choose grains or starches that carry protein. So listen to this. Very often people feel that, beans or peanut butter or quinoa are good sources of protein. They're really not, right? However, they are so nutrient dense and so good for you and so balanced, and they're considered great sources of carbohydrates, complex carbohydrates, that just so happen to also carry protein. So if you incorporate more of them, then you won't need as much animal protein on your dish because it's going to help kind of complement it. So here, let me give you an example. So a cup of rice, whether it's brown or white rice, doesn't matter. A cup of rice is going to have about 2 grams of protein per half cup. A half a cup of quinoa is going to have 8 grams of protein. Okay, so you see the significant difference. So if you accumulate that you do that where you have some quinoa maybe on your salad and then you throw some beans into your rice, that's going to help increase your protein over the whole day. So if you have maybe lentils as your starch or you put lentils in a soup, that's going to help. So it's not that you have to, that's where if you don't technically need to use that as your protein, you can have say chicken or shrimp or something in your soup and then throw some lentils in there as your starch, but it will help add some protein as well. So although it's not the highest quality source of protein, it is going to add some protein. Other examples are things like using a chickpea pasta or even a lentil-based pasta instead of a regular pasta, whether it's used with white flour or whole grain flour. Either way, when it's made with a chickpea-based pasta, it's going to have double the protein and also double the fiber. And so going back to what I was talking about earlier, the more protein you have, now that I'm thinking about it, I don't even think I put this as a benefit to protein. So the other benefit to protein is it helps with satiety. So it helps you feel fuller for longer. And then you tend to also crave sweets less as a result. So getting adequate protein has a lot of benefits. So that's where using that as an example of getting your grains and your starches that carry protein can help, especially if you're not a big meat eater, or you kind of just don't want to increase your meat portion. Now, the fourth way to increase your protein intake, believe it or not, there's studies that actually show that exercise actually helps you respond better to protein intake. So it's kind of like a catch-22 because the more you exercise, the more protein you need. However, just if you are just an everyday average person, you're trying to lose some weight and, you hear all these benefits of exercise and you're it's so great for you, but it's also going to, if you're now making this effort to increase your protein, and now your body's not even utilizing it because you're not moving your body, that's where we have to start to think about, how can I make the best out of the situation? So movement really helps in so many different ways, and it will actually help you make this effort that you're putting in to increase your protein worth it, okay? And then the last way to increase your protein is to make sure that you have these options on hand, okay? So make sure that you set up something in your week where you at least prepare, certain things like protein. The thing when it comes to animal proteins, you do have to prepare it. There are things that you can purchase, you can get a rotisserie chicken weekly. I keep the Bubba turkey burgers in my freezer. You can get, if you're plant-based, you can do from Trader Joe's. They have the pea protein veggie burgers, and you can leave those in your freezer. I also am a huge fan of shrimp cocktail. I didn't put that as a snack option, but there's no reason why you can't have some shrimp cocktail as a snack. But I also love keeping shrimp in my freezer because I find that it's so easy to just take some garlic olive oil, saute it in the pan, and throw the shrimp in there. And so quick and so easy to prepare. So making sure that you make the time to also do a pantry check each week. Do you have things like the Greek yogurt, the cottage cheese, whatever your sources of protein are they readily available to you? And, are they easy to access? Because we could know all of this information and we can make the best effort to implement it. But if you don't have it readily available to you, it's going to be really hard and really frustrating. So make sure you keep those protein-rich options on hand. All right, quick recap. 5 ways to increase your protein intake. Number 1, eat about 25 grams of protein at every meal. Find ways to sneak it in. Use egg whites. Increase maybe your portions. If you usually do 3 ounces of chicken, do 4 ounces of chicken. And you do that 3 times 3 of your meals, it's going to be an extra 20 grams that you get. Okay, so for every ounce of protein, it's 7 grams. So if you increase your protein ounces, 1 ounce at breakfast, 1 ounce at lunch, 1 ounce at dinner, that's 3 ounces. So 3 times 7 is 21 grams. Okay, so it's easy to do. You just have to be intentional about it. Okay, way number 2, include at least 1 protein-rich snacks from the options that I provided before. Way number 3, when you're choosing your grains or your starches, choose the ones that carry a little bit extra protein. Way number 4, exercise. Move your body. It will help with your intake. So although your needs increase, moving helps you to absorb your protein better. And way number 5, make sure you're keeping those options easily accessible and on hand. So it might take you a little bit of time to do some prep work, but it is so worth it in the long run because it'll help you to reach your goals, feel better, and overall just be healthier. Because like I said, more protein means more muscle, the more longevity and overall health and quality of life. All right, guys, I hope you found this episode helpful. If you did, take a screenshot of it. Share it on your story. Tag me at tips_with_Tony with an I. If you are interested in figuring out more of like what your individual needs are in the support of a group, then you will love my Breakup with Binging group coaching program. So now, first thing I want to just say, this group coaching program, I was going to close off enrollment on Sunday the 24th. We don't officially start until February 1st, so I decided to extend it a little bit. So let me just explain to you the premise of the group coaching program, what we're going to be addressing, but then how we can also apply stuff like this within the program, okay? So the initial preface of this program I created was to make sure that you don't have this all or nothing mindset, and so that whatever goals you decide to set for yourself after the 3 months or the 12 weeks is up, you will be able to really understand how to achieve them, okay? The only way we can do that is to get you to stop binging, to manage your emotional eating, even if you're not a binge eater, but you struggle with emotional eating, or you ignore your hunger cues, or you find yourself doing really well Monday through Friday and then going off the rails on the weekend. You have struggled with cravings and not being able to satisfy them without going overboard. You know, there's so many things that come into play that we need to first address before you can fully, go after those goals. So within that, I will be teaching you nutrition strategies that I implement with my one-on-one clients. So for example, getting you to understand what your protein needs are, giving you examples of what your specific protein choices can be for your breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we're going to do this in the support of a group. So it's not just going to be from my professional guidance, but it's also going to be from members who maybe are going through the same thing or struggled with the same thing. And maybe, maybe their protein's on point, but they're struggling to get to exercise. So maybe your exercise is on point, but you're struggling to get your protein. Or maybe you're really great at eating 3 balanced meals a day, but you still struggle with nighttime snacking. Whatever it is, somebody in that group is probably struggling in an area that you're thriving in, and where you're struggling, someone else is thriving. So I'm so excited to have this dynamic of people helping one another. So if this sounds like you and you would benefit from this, all you need to do is text me the word group, okay? Text me group to 914-219-6446. Again, 914-219-6446, and tell me that you're interested. Just say group. I will know that you're interested. It needs to be before February 1st, okay? February 1st, there will be hopefully 15 women. I'm thinking that I'm going to have to decrease it though, because of the energy and being able to be so attentive to each person in the group. So I'm probably reducing it to 10. I haven't decided yet. Either way, when you listen to this, if it's before February 1st, a spot might be available. So message me, 914-219-6446. Again, 914-219-6446. Or if you're like, I don't have any questions, I'm super ready, I know that this is what I need for me, go to www.tipswithtony.com/group-coaching. All right. You can also get the information in the show notes. All right, guys, that is it for me today. Thank you so much for listening. As always, I'm Tony Marinucci, your registered dietitian, helping you get healthy one bite at a time.